Hello and welcome to the 9th video in the Powershell scripting series. In this video we'll cover switch statements, a couple of demos, and we'll cover some using regular expressions and using while loops to check input and loop back and forth through a program. The demos are a little bit long in this one, so we'll go ahead and get right into it. If you find this helpful, please consider giving it a like. If you want to see more of our videos, we are trying to put one out every week for the next couple months at least, so consider subscribing, and we'll get into the presentation. Okay, let's get into the presentation. From the About Switch page, switch statements are language commands that are used to handle multiple possible inputs. Switch statements are set to evaluate a condition, similar to an if statement, and perform an action based on the condition. Switches can be set to check many types of conditions, and like if statements, can evaluate based on a line of text, integer, the value of a variable, and I didn't add it here, but you can also use expressions, and they basically take every type of input that's available to PowerShell. Switches are a great way to set up a menu. It's one of the things we'll do, set up a menu of options. They can be used to run specific code based on predefined input selections combined with runtime user input for the selection. That should have probably said or runtime user input, and we'll show both of those. We'll do a dynamic input situation and a user input demo during the demos. Standard syntax looks a lot like some of the other syntax we've seen. We will populate a value based off of something. In this case, it'll be us gathering input from the user. They'll select option 1, 2, or 3, and then we will call our switch. It will evaluate the value. It'll just take that. So basically, if they pressed a 1, there would be a 1 in this value option, and then we would run code that is inside of the brackets associated with 1. There is quite a few there. The demos are quite a bit longer in this one, so we'll just go ahead and move right on into them. Hope you find them helpful, and let's get going. Okay, and we'll go ahead and get into the demos. We are in the directory from the 8th video here. We need to create the folder to hold this file for this week's demo. So we'll go ahead and create that. We could create it here in the GUI, but we'll just go ahead and create it in PowerShell. Navigate out of this directory and into the PowerShell main folder here by CD, and the double dots there. It just means to go up one directory or folder. So we get new .item, and we're going to specify a type of directory and a name of 09. Enter, and it'll give us some visual output feedback that this was created. So we can go ahead and list out and make sure that that is in there. We'll CD into it and open up code as we did before. So just do code space dot, and we'll create our new file. We could also create a new file in PowerShell, and it's the same thing, except that you specify the type file instead of type directory. We'll go ahead and just create this as 09_demos, trying to build these out into a series of files that can be put on GitHub. So I'm trying to keep better track of all of them. Inside of our demos, we will specify with a double hashtag to make a comment that this is the first of the two switch demos. You only need one hashtag for a PowerShell comment. I just do 2, so it reminds me that the comment is mine when I see it. So one of the things we need to do to kind of keep the screen from getting cluttered up and to provide some line spacing is provide some write output with some blank spaces, and this will basically just create a line, and the more we have here, the more it'll kind of space it out. But so we'll create one space and we'll write an output. We'll create a quick menu here, nothing super fancy. But we'll just say welcome to the 9th demo in the PowerShell series. In this PowerShell series, close that off with a quotation. Then we want to go ahead and copy the right output line, get a couple of empty spaces or empty lines, that way we can ask for some input, and without that, like I said, without these lines being right on top of each other. We can do Shift Alt down to just copy whatever is on that current line. And we create a menu here by just saying 1 with a closing parenthesis and check running services. This switch will run just a couple of common utilities. Maybe we'll add a couple of different searches in. So we'll say view top 10 processes that are consuming memory for our second menu option here. And then in our third menu option, maybe we will check for maybe the files in the C drive. Alright, so we'll check the contents of the C drive. So in each one of these different menu options, we will program a specific command that basically corresponds to what we've just specified there. So now we need to get some user input, and to do that we will store the value that is in read host here. We'll store it in a variable called selection, and read host has a prompt parameter, and so we specify, please select an option. Now we want to make sure that the user selects valid options here. So really 1 through 3 are the only options of input that we want to accept in this. So we want to create a loop, create a while loop, which we looked at a couple videos ago, that can check the input. So we'll say while selection, and we can say while the selection is not matching or not to match. So while it does not match, and here we're going to create a regular expression. And if you're not familiar with regular expressions, we're not going to go too deep into them, but there is some basic syntax for them. And in this, the caret specifies that we want to check the beginning of a string of text. The brackets indicate the range of text that is allowed, or characters that are allowed. In this case, just the characters 1 through 3. And then at the end we're going to go ahead and specify the amount of characters that are valid inside of these squiggly brackets. It's only 1 character that is valid. And then here we put the $sign to indicate the close of the string. So the string should match 1 through 3, only one of them, and then that should be the end of it. And just like any loop or construct in PowerShell, we need to enclose it in the curly or squiggly brackets. We do want to clear some space in here, because this will start to compound on top of each other. If you don't put a space in here and somebody puts in a bunch of incorrect options, that'll all just sit one on top of the other. So basically we're just going to go ahead and make our check again. We'll prompt that the entry is not valid and ask for valid input. The input is already specified, so we won't go ahead and update them as to what valid input is. But so that is it. That is it for our while loop and our input gathering. Now we need to create our switch to do something based on the valid input. So 1, 2, or 3. And we can actually test that this is working by clearing and running this real quick. Just making sure that we get our menu here and that everything comes out. You see the spacing comes through. And if we select an invalid option, it keeps prompting us until we actually do select a valid option. And so we'll go ahead and select that valid option, then it kicks us out because there is no code set yet. We'll go ahead and get that code started here. We'll create the switch statement. We want to comment as best we can. I myself get away from it even in this video. It's important to stay with if you want to be able to come back to this later, especially once your program starts to grow. Something that's, a couple of switch statements and some ifs, not really a big deal, but once your program grows. All right, so here when we create our switch, we have our selection value. So whatever that value is, based on that, we're going to do something. And in this case, we're going to do whatever we mentioned in 1, 2, or 3. You don't have to have a default case if you have a bigger program. Again, it's a good idea to have one, but it's not necessary with what we're doing here. We just got a couple simple switches, and nobody else besides me or you, if you're following along at home, are going to be really running this program. So here we'll just say, because we said that one was to get the top 10 services, or get services, I should say, that are running. That's what it was, yeah. So here we have our switch statement that just uses a get service command, then pipes it to where, and then inside of the where clause brackets, we have our status equals running. So if we run this now, we would expect that the running services would output, and they do. We can go ahead and know that the first switch statement is correct. We just wanted to grab some of them. We could say select the first 5. And that doesn't actually work. We need to take it out of the where clause there, is why that it tried to pipe the contents of where to the select statement, and that was not going to work. So basically we pulled it out of the brackets for the where clause, and now we see that it selects the first 5 as we would expect. And that can be set to use any of, that can be modified to do a lot of different things with it. Just a pretty simple one-liner there with the get service. So now we'll move on to our second, which was to get the top 10 processes consuming memory. So we'll go ahead and say get process, which is the command for the processes. And then we will pipe that to sort based on a property, that property being the working set. So it's WS. If you do a get process, you'll see the headers. That's how I review what I might need to look for in any one of the queries I'm doing, whether it's against Active Directory or just the regular workstation like we're doing here. But we can go ahead and say sort based on that working set, which is the memory usage, and pipe that to select, and we'll select the working set, select the ID and the process name. And so here I did not write the code correctly. A positional parameter cannot be found that accepts an argument of just the hyphen. That basically means that there's something wrong in this syntax. And you can see here that I have a space between the hyphen and first, and that is why that spawned. Every time I'm pressing Control S to save the changes I make before I come into the console, in case that's not, come into this console and run this program in case it's not clear. But now that works as expected when we write the statement correctly. We'll get the working set ID and process name as we would expect. So now we know that both of our This is what we would see if we did get process here. These are the working sets, the process name, ID, and working set. We can pull any of these values that we want, plus any others. It's really a really robust system, PowerShell, and the information that it provides through the pipeline and through these their API calls to the operating system, to the Windows kernel itself. So we know that our first and second options are working. We'll go ahead and program our third was to list the files of the C drive, C directory I put there. And that is just a get child item with the path specified as C. Nothing too fancy there. But if we wanted to run some of these on a regular basis, we could kind of combine them with what the next demo will be to check the days of the week and then run a particular process or a command. Forgot that the last thing I ran was get process. Apologies. And if we press 3, we would expect to see whatever is in the C drive. So now we know that all 3 of our programs are working. Our switch works as we would expect. We can come on into regular PowerShell, not in VS Code, and see the exact same thing. As you can see here, when we're done, it kind of just kicks us out with no real warning or no option. Let's say we wanted to maybe perform another one of these functions or tasks. There's no real option to do that. One way we can do that is to come to the top of our demo here, and we want to create a variable that will be used to ask the user eventually if they would like to perform another task. And then we'll loop through with a while statement. We'll demo this here. So we start by creating a variable called answer, and we're going to set that equal to y, not minus y. Collect my issue there in a second. So we wrap the entire everything in the switch inside of this while loop. And we say that while answer equals yes, and we just want to loop back around. So we will loop through, and at the bottom, check my notes real quick to see where I have the question asked. So here we're going to ask the user if they'd like to perform another action. We'll create some space between the output there of one of the 3 commands that came out. We put clear host at the beginning of the script, and that way we can go ahead and just remove any of the output that comes up so it doesn't continue to clutter. But I mean, you could always remove that if you wanted all the output to stay on the screen and just kind of scroll through it. But here we're going to ask, this is the same thing as getting the other input. We want to read host and go ahead and ask if they want to complete another action. And we would do some checks for we'll do check for whether or not they've specified a lowercase or uppercase y. And this is the exact same check as we did earlier, except the regular expression is a little bit easier to understand. So basically we want to say that while answer does not match one of these, and it's going to be inside the quotations and then inside of the brackets. And we want to say either y uppercase and lowercase, or n uppercase or lowercase. If the value of in the answer variable does not match one of those 4 characters, we want to go ahead and ask for valid input. And that's a pretty simple, but we would want to again specify the amount of characters that can be accepted, or else somebody could put in a string of characters that are not a Y or an M, and then add one and it'll work. So, but here we're just gonna kind of skip over all of that, and something to think about if you're doing this for people who will actually use this that are not you. So, excuse me. So we'll check if answer matches N. Then we're going to go ahead and set answer to N, and then we'll break out of the script. Otherwise, answer will continue to be Y like it is up at the top, and we will go ahead and continue to loop back around. Now, you probably have to specify at the beginning either uppercase or lowercase y. I set it to a lowercase y, and I test with a lowercase y. There might be other tests that need to be done. Again, these are just for demonstration purposes and should not be. So this actually did not work as we expected. It kind of just kicks right back without asking. And we ended up placing this. We need to move it inside of this switch statement overall. It needs to be within the brackets of this switch statement. So that's what we did. We took the closing bracket of the switch statement and we moved it down to the bottom of the script, and we checked right there to make sure that there were no errors with the lines. So here now it runs our option, and at the bottom it says, would you like to perform another action? And again, I just test with lowercase y and no lowercase n, but if I wanted to, we know that n works to break out of it. So let's see if y works, and it does, but it doesn't clear the screen the way we want. Everything is still yucky, or still very visible there. So we'll move the clear host inside of the while statement and see if that fixes it. I checked my notes previous to some other scripts that I had run with this same functionality, and it does need to be inside of the while. We'll go ahead and check that out, make that change real quick. Yeah, press Control C to get out of this. Clear and check the code. Bring this clear host into the. So if you just press Alt and down, it will move the line, and that's what I did. I accidentally pressed Shift, Alt, and down, but I meant to press Alt and down. So now with the with the clear host inside of the while loop, if we perform another action, we see that it does in fact clear the output. Go ahead and we got a full listing of the C drive on this one, and I didn't go back and troubleshoot this, but I wasn't exactly sure why the C drive printed like that. Okay, so yeah, we'll go ahead and look into this in a future video maybe, why these printed out so weird in this shell. But we'll go ahead and move on into our next demo. In this demo, we definitely looked at the looping through user input and looping through a program to go back to the beginning. We used a regular expression to make sure that we got only the input that we were expecting. In this next demo, we'll take a look at using some dynamic input. So we'll run a command that will get the date, and then we'll check the methods and use the day of the week to run any command. We can put anything inside the code block, so we'll use this just to print an output, but we'll store the date in a get date, or in a date variable with the get date command. And we can go ahead and see the available methods and properties to us if we pipe this variable date to the get member command. You can do this in the shell, a little bit easier than you can in the script, but it works just the same. So we'll run our clear here. After we get out of this, press Control C to back out of this. All right, clear the screen. And we can go ahead and see the methods and properties available. We can see the type of data that this is. We can see that it is a date time, so it's a little different than a string or another object array that we've been working with. So we can add hours, get the type, and down underneath the methods, we can send it to string if we wanted. Down underneath the methods are the properties. And these are what we're concerned about here. We're going to look at the day of the week property that comes with this particular data type. So we'll get rid of this particular get member command. And we can just do, we wanted to check the type, but we didn't care about the rest of the methods or properties. We could just do the dot notation, get type, and then do full name. If we run this now, Control S to save and run this program, we can go ahead and see that it will print out the data type by itself, none of the extra methods or properties. And there we have it. So we can utilize these properties and these available data, and we can actually just say date dot day of week. And if we take a look at the actual day of the week that it is, if we actually store that in a variable and then print out that variable, we would expect to see the day of the week. And if we look here, it is Wednesday. So we should get the Wednesday output, and that's exactly what we get. We can take that and just basically pipe it into the switch the same way we did with the 1, 2, 3 options that we had for user input in the previous switch. So we can just say switch and then day of the week, open up the brackets. And so, like I said, for this can be anything. If you wanted to, run or check the services that are running on Monday and do something different on Tuesday, you could actually do that and then program a script to run and then schedule it. We're just going to use these pre-typed out definitions for each of these cases. It is the same again as 1, 2, or 3 were in our first demo. It'll be the exact same thing. So we'll go ahead and speed through to when I've got all these copied in here, and then we will pick it back up then. Okay, now that we have all of our values, we'll go ahead and save, Control S. And this is a lot easier than grabbing the user input, but it should work just the same. We know the day of the week that it is Wednesday, so we would expect to get the halfway through message. It's exactly what we get. I hope these videos hope these demos were helpful. If they were, please consider liking, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe for future videos, and we will see you in the next one.